when a powerful black CEO, Elena Brooks, walks into her own luxury hotel late at night. She is denied service, mocked, and escorted out like an unwanted stranger. Humiliated but unbroken, she makes one phone call that changes everything. By morning, the entire management team faces her in a brutal boardroom showdown, where hidden footage exposes their arrogance and prejudice for all to see. In front of the staff, Elena delivers cold-cutting justice, firing every guilty employee and elevating the one housekeeper who had the courage to speak up. And when she steps before the press, Elena transforms her personal humiliation into a public reckoning, turning the scandal into a legacy of reform, power, and poetic justice. This is not just a story of racism. It's a story of resistance, dignity, and triumph. The rain came down in silver threads glistening beneath the neon lights of the city. A sleek black car rolled to a stop in front of the Orion Grand, a glass and marble hotel. Towering, pristine, the crown jewel of Brooks International Holdings. Elena Brooks stepped out quietly. No chauffeur, no security detail. Just her, an umbrella, and a leather weekender bag. At 32, she was one of the youngest black women to lead a billion-dollar hospitality empire. But tonight, she wanted no spotlight, no red carpet. Just rest. She pushed through the revolving doors, her sneakers squeaking slightly against the polished floor. The lobby glowed warm, filled with murmurs of late-night guests checking in. Chandeliers glittered above. Behind the front desk, two receptionists straightened, then glanced at one another. "Good evening," Elena said, offering a polite smile. "Reservation under Brooks." Elena Brooks. The young man at the desk gave her a quick once-over. His smile tightened. "Could you repeat that?" "Reservation. Elena Brooks." He tapped at the computer, but his tone carried an edge. "Are you sure you have the right hotel, ma'am? This property is rather exclusive." Elena's smile dimmed, but she kept her composure. "Yes, I know exactly where I am." The woman beside him leaned in, whispering, before addressing Elena with the same false sweetness. "We may not have anything available tonight. Perhaps you'd like us to recommend somewhere more affordable?" Elena tilted her head, her eyes steady. "You didn't check the system." The man clicked noisily at the keyboard, then frowned. Nothing's coming up under that name." "Maybe you booked under someone else's credit card." Elena set her ID and black Amex on the counter. "No, try again." The pause that followed was deliberate. He didn't pick up her card. Instead, he looked past her as if searching for the real guest she must be waiting on. "I'm telling you, ma'am," he said with a thin smile. "We don't have a reservation for you. Perhaps you made a mistake." Elena inhaled slowly, her fingers tightening around the handle of her bag. She could feel the stares from nearby guests. The air grew heavy with unspoken judgment. "Check. Again." The receptionist's voice hardened. "Look, I don't want to be rude, but this isn't the kind of place people just walk into. If you can't provide proof, my ID is right there." Elena interrupted softly, her voice calm but sharp enough to slice the tension. "And my proof is in your system. Under Brooks." "Elena Brooks," the woman at the desk smirked faintly. Maybe the system glitched. Elena felt the storm rise in her chest, but she pressed it down. Tonight wasn't about rage, it was about watching, waiting. "Fine," she said, her voice like steel wrapped in silk. "Call your manager. I'll wait." The two exchanged a glance, irritation flickering across their faces. One of them muttered, "Unbelievable," before disappearing into the back office. Elena stood there, still and unyielding, as the lobby whispers grew louder. A traveler chuckled under his breath. A couple shook their heads. To them, she was just another outsider, someone trying to step into a world they believed didn't belong to her, and they had no idea she owned it. The manager arrived with the casual arrogance of someone who thought he owned the air in the room. A tall man in a crisp navy suit, slick hair pulled back too tightly, his steps echoed across the marble floor. "What seems to be the problem?" His voice carried more condescension than curiosity. The receptionist gestured lazily toward Elena. "She claims she has a reservation," Elena corrected, her tone even. "I do have a reservation. Under Brooks." Elena Brooks. The manager scanned her slowly, eyes sliding from her sneakers to her bag, then finally to her face. His smile curved, unpleasant. "Ma'am, perhaps you're confused. This isn't a hostel. The Orion Grand is. Premium." I know exactly where I am, Elena said, and I expect you to honor my booking. He chuckled, not bothering to hide the disdain. People make mistakes all the time. Sometimes they mix up the names. Sometimes they think they booked online, but didn't. I didn't make a mistake. His smile thinned. Well, I don't see your name here. And frankly, he leaned on the counter, lowering his voice just enough to sound polite, yet just loud enough for bystanders to hear. I think this hotel may not be the best fit for you. The receptionist snickered behind him. Elena's chest tightened. Around her, whispers stirred. A woman muttered, embarrassing. A man chuckled. She straightened, voice steady. Are you refusing to check me in? The manager folded his arms. I'm refusing to let someone disrupt our guests with confusion. Why don't you try the hotels downtown? They're more, how should I say, flexible. Flexible, Elena repeated, her tone flat. Yes. His eyes narrowed. This is an exclusive property. We have a certain standard. We can't just let anyone walk in and claim they belong here. Her jaw flexed, but she didn't move. I booked this room. Call your general manager. He laughed softly, shaking his head. That won't be necessary. You've wasted enough of our time. Call him. Instead, he signaled across the lobby. Security. 2 guards in black suits moved toward her, deliberate and heavy-footed. Guests shifted, curious now, drawn to the spectacle. Sir, Elena said firmly, you're making a mistake. No, he replied, his smirk widening. I'm preventing one. The taller guard stepped forward. Is there a problem? Yes, the manager said smoothly. This woman is trespassing. She doesn't belong here. Elena's fingers twitched at her side. She fought to keep her voice level. That's a serious accusation, and I'd advise you to think carefully before repeating it. The guard hesitated, glancing between them, but the manager's confidence held. Escort her out now. Gasps rippled through the lobby. Elena stood still, spine straight as steel. Are you sure you want to do this? In front of all these witnesses? The manager's smirk turned cruel. Oh, I'm sure. This isn't the kind of place for people like you. The words dropped like stones into silence. Elena's breath caught. The crowd shifted, some pretending not to hear, others staring outright. For one brief second, she let the fury flash in her eyes. Then just as quickly, she buried it under calm resolve. Fine, she whispered, her voice sharp enough to cut through the air. We'll do this your way. The guards moved closer, but Elena lifted her chin. Her gaze lingered on the manager, memorizing every line of his smug smile. And though he didn't know it yet, his career had just ended. The lobby had gone still. Elena stood in the center, 2 security guards looming on either side. The manager folded his arms, lips curled into a smirk. Behind the desk, the receptionist whispered and laughed softly as if they'd already won. Let's make this simple, the taller guard said. Step outside, ma'am. Elena's voice was calm, each syllable measured. I told you I have a reservation. My ID is right there. The guard hesitated, glancing at the counter where her license and card still lay untouched. But the manager cut in sharply. She's wasting everyone's time. Remove her. A murmur rose among the guests scattered across the plush lobby chairs. Some leaned forward eagerly like they were watching a play unfold. Others shifted uncomfortably, eyes sliding away, unwilling to intervene. From the corner, a young housekeeper lingered, clutching a tray of glasses. Her eyes darted from Elena to the manager, then to the guards. She opened her mouth, but the receptionist hissed, Don't. Elena's gaze flicked to her. Their eyes met for a fleeting second. Silent solidarity, before the housekeeper dropped her stare back to the floor. The shorter guard stepped closer. Ma'am, please don't make this harder than it needs to be. Harder? Elena's tone sharpened. You're about to drag a paying guest out of her own reservation, without checking the system, without calling a superior, without even looking at the ID I placed right in front of you, the manager scoffed. Enough theatrics. We don't have time for this nonsense. Elena turned to the gathering crowd. Her voice carried low but steady. This is how they treat a black woman in this lobby. As a criminal, as a liar. As if my money, my ID, my word, none of it matters. A few heads lowered. A man coughed awkwardly. No one spoke. The housekeeper shifted again, whispering, She did have a... Silence. The manager snapped, glaring at her. Back to your duties. Her face reddened as she retreated. Elena picked up her ID and card slowly, sliding them back into her wallet. Her movements were deliberate, controlled, the kind of calm that comes before a storm. She adjusted the strap of her bag and faced the guards. "I'll step outside. But remember, every eye in this room just watched what happened. Every one of them will remember." The taller guard faltered, but the manager barked, "Now." The glass door swung open. The night air hit cold and wet against her face as she stepped into the rain. Behind her, the laughter of the reception staff drifted faintly through the glass. Elena paused under the awning, her reflection shimmering in the puddles at her feet. Humiliation pressed heavy on her chest, but beneath it something colder stirred. Not rage, not despair, strategy. She pulled out her phone, her fingers steady, her voice icy as she dialed. Rainwater dripped from the edge of her umbrella, splashing against the pavement. Elena stood outside her own hotel, the lobby lights glowing behind her like a stage where the curtain had just dropped. Her phone buzzed faintly in her hand. She didn't scroll. She didn't hesitate. She dialed a single number, the one that never went unanswered. The line clicked. "Elena?" A deep voice answered, warm with familiarity but sharp with concern. "It's past midnight. What's wrong?" Her voice was cool, clipped, a blade dulled by restraint. "I was just denied service." "At the Orion Grant." Silence. Then a low growl. "Denied service? By whom?" "Front desk. Duty manager. Security. They humiliated me, mocked me, and escorted me out like I was a trespasser." "Elena, listen carefully." Her tone cut clean through the night air. "I want a board-level meeting convened tomorrow morning. At this property. First thing, full attendance." The voice on the other end steadied. "Understood. And make sure legal is present. This is not going to be swept under the rug. Consider it done." Elena ended the call before he could say more. She wasn't interested in comfort. Not tonight. For a moment she just stood there, her reflection mirrored in the glass facade of her own empire. Inside she could see them, the receptionist laughing, the manager smirking, the guards returning to their posts like nothing had happened. They thought they had won. Elena adjusted the strap of her bag across her shoulder, her lips curling into something colder than a smile. They didn't know who she was, not yet. And by tomorrow morning, their ignorance would cost them everything. She turned from the glow of the lobby and walked into the rain, every step measured, deliberate, unstoppable. The Orion Grand looked different in daylight. Golden light streamed through the lobby windows, bouncing off polished marble. But beneath the sparkle, tension hung thick. Employees whispered in corners. Guests glanced at the suits filing in. Men and women in tailored attire, briefcases, and clipped expressions. At the center of it all walked Elena. She wore a charcoal gray suit, her hair tied back neatly, her heels clicking in sharp rhythm against the marble. No sneakers now. No umbrella. No trace of the woman they had mocked hours ago. Behind her trailed 2 lawyers, the executive chair of her board, and 3 senior directors. They cut through the lobby like a storm. The staff froze. The duty manager stiffened behind the desk. His smirk faltered when Elena's gaze locked on him. "Conference room," she said coldly. "Now." Inside the glass-walled boardroom, silence stretched heavy. The manager, the 2 receptionists, and the security guard sat stiffly at one end of the long mahogany table. At the other sat Elena, flanked by her team. A recorder blinked red on the table. She folded her hands. "Let's begin." The manager cleared his throat, forcing confidence back into his voice. I think there's been a misunderstanding." Elena's eyebrow arched. "Misunderstanding?" "Yes," he said quickly. "This woman, a guest, came in last night claiming she had a reservation, but there was nothing under her name. We acted professionally." The receptionist nodded eagerly. "Yes, ma'am." "She was aggressive, demanding. We tried to help, but she made a scene." Elena's lips twitched. Not a smile, something sharper. "A scene." The second receptionist chimed in, her voice too bright. "We thought she might be trespassing. You know how some people try to sneak into luxury hotels?" "Enough." Elena's voice cracked like thunder. They flinched. She leaned forward, her eyes sweeping across them. "You claim you acted professionally, that you tried to help me, that I made a scene?" "Yes," the manager said, nodding quickly. "We did our best under the circumstances." Her gaze slid to the guards. "And you?" The taller guard shifted in his chair. "We were told to escort you out." "That's all?" "Told," Elena repeated softly. By him. The guard nodded once. For a moment only the hum of the air conditioner filled the room. Then a timid voice broke the silence. She's telling the truth. Heads turned. The housekeeper stood near the door, wringing her hands. Her voice trembled, but her eyes held steady. I was there. She gave her name. She showed her ID. They laughed at her. They mocked her. They said she didn't belong here. Lies, the receptionist hissed. She wasn't even close enough to hear. I was right there. The housekeeper burst out, her voice rising with desperation. I heard every word. You told her, this isn't the kind of place for people like you. The words hung in the air like smoke. Elena sat back, her expression unreadable. Her lawyers scribbled notes. The manager's face flushed crimson. She's exaggerating, or, Elena cut in softly, she's the only one here with the courage to tell the truth. Silence pressed down on the table. The manager opened his mouth again, but the words died when Elena leaned forward. Her eyes locked on his. Tell me, she said, her voice cold enough to frost the glass walls. What exactly do you think qualifies as professional behavior? Mocking a woman in front of guests? Ignoring her identification? Calling security on her? His lips parted, but no words came. Elena let the silence drag, stretching it until sweat beaded on his forehead. Interesting, she finally said, her tone flat. Because where I come from, that's not professionalism. That's abuse of power. That's discrimination. That's arrogance. She stood. The room seemed to shrink as her presence filled it. And in this company, she continued, her voice ringing, those things are not tolerated. The staff exchanged nervous glances. The housekeeper's hand shook, but she lifted her chin slightly, as though drawing strength from Elena's words. Elena placed both hands on the table, leaning in close enough that the manager couldn't look away. You think last night was just another shift, just another guest you could dismiss, just another black woman you could humiliate. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Lethal in its calm, you were wrong. The manager swallowed hard, his confidence draining from his posture. Elena straightened, her eyes sweeping over all of them. This isn't over, in fact. She gestured to the blinking recorder. It's only just begun, and for the first time they began to realize who exactly they were dealing with. The blinds in the conference room were drawn now. The atmosphere thickened, heavy as a storm before lightning. Elena stood at the head of the table, one hand resting lightly on the glossy wood, the other on the remote control of the projector. Her eyes were calm, but her stillness radiated power. Last night, she began softly. You all painted a story where I was aggressive, confused, unprofessional, where you were polite, helpful, and above reproach. Her words cut through the silence like knives. The manager shifted in his seat. We told the truth. Elena's lips twitched, the faintest suggestion of amusement. Then you won't mind if we review the footage together. The blood drained from the receptionist's face. A screen blinked alive at the far wall. The grainy black and white security feed played. There was the lobby, wide and gleaming. There was Elena standing calmly at the counter. There were the smirks, the sneers, the rolling eyes. Every microaggression laid bare in brutal clarity. The first receptionist's voice echoed through the speakers. Perhaps you'd like somewhere more affordable. The second followed. This isn't the kind of place people just walk into. Then came the manager himself, captured in perfect sound and picture. This isn't the kind of place for people like you. The words hissed through the room like venom. No one spoke. Elena let the silence stretch, let the footage play again, rewinding and replaying the worst moments until every denial crumbled under the weight of their own voices. Finally, she stopped the video. Professional? She asked quietly, her gaze fixed on the manager. He stammered, sweat breaking along his temple. That was taken out of context. Her eyebrow arched. Out of context? Did the camera trick your mouth into forming those words? I didn't mean it like that. Like what? Elena's voice sharpened. Like an insult? Like a slur? Like a dismissal of my humanity in front of an entire lobby of witnesses? He faltered. His mouth opened, closed, then opened again, but no words came. The first receptionist burst out suddenly, her voice high and panicked. I was just following his lead. He told us she wasn't a real guest. Don't drag me into this, the manager snapped, his composure breaking. You laughed too. I thought she was a fraud, she cried. You said she was lying. The second receptionist's voice cracked. Everyone thought so. We thought she didn't belong here, okay? Didn't belong. Elena repeated their words slowly, as if tasting the bitter syllables. Her tone dropped to ice. And what exactly made you so certain of that? No answer. The silence screamed louder than any denial. Elena leaned forward slightly, her gaze sweeping across all of them. Last night, you didn't just see a woman at the counter. You saw someone you decided wasn't worthy. You looked at me, and in a glance you judged. You mocked. You humiliated. And when I refused to shrink, you tried to throw me out. Her voice cracked like thunder now, reverberating against the glass walls. You didn't just insult a guest. You insulted the very name of this hotel. Her fist slammed down once on the table. The sound made them all flinch. My name. The room froze. The manager blinked. Your name? Elena straightened, her presence towering even as she stood perfectly still. Yes, my name. Elena Brooks, CEO of Brooks International Holdings, owner of the Orion Grand. Gasps tore through the room. The housekeeper's hand flew to her mouth. One of the guards whispered under his breath, "Oh, God." The manager's face drained white, his lips trembling. You own? Elena's voice sharpened to a blade. Every wall, every room, every paycheck you've ever cashed here traces back to me. And last night, in my own property, you tried to strip me of my dignity. No one dared to breathe. She let the words hang, heavy and unrelenting, before finishing in a low, dangerous calm. And for that, there will be consequences. The collapse had begun. The room quaked with silence. Elena's revelation hung in the air like a hammer waiting to fall. The guilty staff sat pale and rigid, their carefully constructed lies shattered. She didn't give them time to recover. Effective immediately, she said, her tone as sharp as glass. You are relieved of your positions at the Orion Grand. The first receptionist gasped. Wait, fired? You can't. I can. Elena's voice cut her off like a blade, and I just did. The second receptionist's chair scraped against the floor as she half rose, desperation flickering in her eyes. Please, Ms. Brooks, I didn't mean it like that. I was nervous, I just followed his lead. She pointed at the manager with a trembling hand. It was him? He told us. The manager's composure snapped. Lies. Don't you dare blame me for your incompetence. Elena lifted a hand and the room stilled instantly. I don't care who led or who followed, she said coldly. What I saw was a team that laughed, a team that mocked, a team that stood together in arrogance. So you will leave together. The taller security guard cleared his throat nervously. Ma'am, we were just following orders. We didn't know. You didn't need to know my name to know I was a human being, Elena said, her voice low but heavy. And yet you chose silence. Complicity. That's not what protection looks like. That's cowardice. The shorter guard lowered his head. The first receptionist's voice cracked, rising into panic. Please, I have kids. I need this job. I'll do better, I swear. Give me one more chance. Elena's eyes didn't waver. Your children will not learn integrity by watching their parent degrade others. They'll learn it by watching you face consequences. Tears welled in the woman's eyes, but Elena's tone stayed icy, resolute. You're done here. The manager finally stood, his arrogance collapsing into rage. You think you can just throw us out? After everything we've given this hotel? You're nothing without staff like us. Elena stepped closer, her heels striking the wood with deliberate force. She stared into his eyes, unflinching. This hotel was built on excellence, she said softly. Excellence doesn't look like you. It doesn't sound like you, and it will never need you. His face flushed crimson, his chest heaving. For the first time, he looked small. Elena turned to HR, seated near the corner. Escort them out. Strip their access. Effective immediately. HR nodded grimly. The guilty staff erupted. Please, excuses, curses. One receptionist sobbed. The manager swore under his breath, vowing she'd regret this. The guards shifted uncomfortably, silent but defeated. Elena didn't flinch. She let the chaos wash over her, unmoved like stone against a storm. Out, she said finally, her voice thundering with finality. HR and security staff moved in. Chairs scraped. Doors slammed. The echo of their departure carried down the corridor like the sound of justice delivered. When the room settled again, only Elena, her team, and the housekeeper remained. The young woman stood frozen by the wall, eyes wide, hands trembling. She looked as if she might vanish at any second. Elena's gaze softened just slightly as she turned to her. "What's your name?" The housekeeper swallowed hard. "Maria," Elena nodded. "Maria, last night you spoke up when no one else did. It cost you, but you did it anyway." Maria's lips parted, her voice shaky. I was afraid, but it wasn't right what they did." Elena's tone gentled, but her words carried weight. "Courage doesn't mean the absence of fear. It means standing despite it." She paused, then looked to her HR director. "Promote her. Effective immediately. She'll move into guest relations." Maria gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. Ms. Brooks, I don't know what to say." Elena's expression softened for the first time that day. "Say thank you by carrying this place forward. With dignity." Tears filled Maria's eyes, but this time they were tears of relief, of pride. Elena turned back to the room, her voice returning to its commanding timbre. "This hotel will not be remembered for arrogance or exclusion. It will be remembered for excellence, service, and respect, and anyone who cannot uphold those values will not stand under my name." Her words rang out, final and unshakable. Justice had been served. The flash of cameras bathed the grand ballroom in white light. Rows of journalists filled every seat. Microphones clustered like a forest at the podium. A storm of curiosity buzzed through the room. The scandal at the Orion Grand had already leaked. But no one knew the full truth. Elena Brooks walked in with measured grace, her black suit gleaming under the chandeliers. The board followed behind her, solemn, silent. The murmurs rose. "That's her. The CEO herself. Is it true she was denied service?" Elena stopped at the podium, letting the room quiet itself. She stood tall, commanding without effort. "Good morning," she began, her voice steady, resonant. "I am Elena Brooks, Chief Executive Officer of the Orion Grand Hotels." The room hushed to pin-drop silence. 2 nights ago, I walked into this very property, my own property, unannounced. I was tired. I was unaccompanied. I was apparently unrecognizable. She paused, her gaze sweeping the room. What should have been a quiet night's rest turned into humiliation. Cameras clicked furiously. Pens scratched across notepads. I was denied service, mocked, escorted out by security. Not because of my behavior, not because of policy, but because of prejudice. A wave of whispers crashed through the crowd. Elena raised a hand, silencing them. "The individuals responsible have been terminated. Their behavior is not reflective of the Orion Grand's values, nor will it ever be tolerated under my leadership." A reporter shot up. "Ms. Brooks, some are calling this an overreaction. Do you believe firing the entire front-of-house team was justified?" Elena's eyes sharpened. "Prejudice is not a mistake. It is a choice. And choices carry consequences." The reporter sat back, chastened. Another voice rang out. "Ms. Brooks, what about the staff who did intervene? Will there be recognition?" A small smile touched Elena's lips. Yes, there was one. A housekeeper, Maria, who found the courage to speak against her colleagues. Effective immediately, she has been promoted. Because courage and integrity are what we value here. The room erupted in murmurs of approval, applause breaking through from the back rows. Elena's gaze turned serious again. "This is not just about me. It is about every guest who has ever been dismissed, belittled or disrespected because of who they are, how they look, or where they come from. Hospitality means welcome, and if we cannot extend that welcome to everyone, then we do not deserve the name." Her words landed heavy, each one like a bell tolling across the room. "From this day forward, the Orion Grand will undergo a full-scale audit of our hiring, training, and service practices. Bias training will be mandatory, guest dignity will be non-negotiable, and leadership will be accountable." Applause swelled, growing louder, rolling through the ballroom like thunder. Elena let it crest before speaking again, softer this time, almost intimate. "I was humiliated in my own home, but that humiliation has become clarity, and clarity has become action. This is how change begins, not in silence but in confrontation. Not in fear but in resolve." She stepped back from the podium, her presence filling the room even in stillness. The board rose with her, a united wall of authority. Reporters shouted questions, cameras flashed, but Elena did not flinch. She walked off the stage with her head high, leaving her words to echo in the air, unshakable. Outside, the world was already buzzing, news feeds exploding with headlines, social media ablaze with clips of her speech. Hashtags surged. Orion Grand Justice, Elena Brooks. Hospitality for all. The very hotel that tried to deny her presence was now the stage of her greatest vindication. As Elena stepped into her car, Maria stood by the entrance in her new uniform, eyes wide with gratitude. Their gazes met. No words were needed. Elena gave her a single nod, a silent promise that dignity would no longer be negotiable. The car door shut. The engine purred. The empire she built had wavered for one night, but today it stood stronger, unshakable, indelibly marked by justice, and those who tried to humiliate her. They were already forgotten, swept into the shadows of irrelevance, erased by the very woman they sought to belittle. Elena Brooks had turned their cruelty into her triumph, and the world would remember it.